The sound was not loud. That is what Daniel would remember later. Not a scream. Not a crash like in movies. Just a heavy thud. A body hitting wood. Then the soft slide of skin against polished stairs. Daniel stood halfway down the staircase of their duplex in Magodo, Lagos. His hand was still shaking. His chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped rope around it and pulled hard. At the bottom of the stairs, his father lay twisted. One leg bent wrong. One hand under his body. His glasses had flown off and rested near the shoe rack beside the door. The house smelled like stew. Burnt stew. Upstairs, his mother was crying. Not loud. Not the kind of cry that asks for help. It was the kind of cry that has been practicing for years how to be quiet. Daniel's ears were ringing. He did not mean. He swallowed. He did not mean to push that hard. His father's head was bleeding now. A dark line spreading slowly on the white tile. Outside, faintly, church members were singing as they walked past the street. Great is thy faithfulness. Daniel felt like laughing. Or screaming. Or both. 10 minutes earlier, his father had been shouting Bible verses while dragging his mother by her arm. Now he was not moving at all. Daniel took one step down. Then another. He whispered, "Daddy." His little sister, Peace, stood at the hallway upstairs, hugging her teddy bear. She was 8. Her eyes were wide and glassy. "Mummy," she whispered. Their mother finally walked to the top of the stairs. Her wrapper was torn at the shoulder. Her lip was bleeding. One side of her face was already swelling. She looked down at her husband. And something changed in her face. Not shock. Not fear. Something else. Something quiet. She walked down slowly. As if she had stepped into a new world and did not want to disturb it. She knelt beside him. Touched his neck. Checked his pulse. Her hand trembled. She looked at Daniel. For a long time. He expected her to scream. To slap him. To ask, "What have you done?" But she did not. Instead, she said something that would follow him for the rest of his life. "Go and call the neighbors," she said softly. "Tell them. Daddy fell." Daniel stared at her. Her eyes did not blink. "Go," she said again. And that is when he understood. It was going to be called an accident. But the truth? The truth was standing on the staircase with him. 3 months earlier. The whole church stood when Pastor Akin announced his name. Let us appreciate our beloved Deacon Samuel Adeyemi. Clapping filled the sanctuary of Christ Vine Assembly in Ikeja. Samuel Adeyemi stood up slowly from the front row. White kaftan. Gold wristwatch. Polished black shoes. Bible tucked under his arm like a badge. He smiled the smile people trusted. He shook hands. He waved. He bent slightly in humble greeting. Daniel sat beside him, stiff in his blue Sunday shirt. His father leaned down and whispered, "Sit straight. People are watching." Daniel straightened. Everyone watched Deacon Adeyemi. He paid school fees for 3 orphan boys last year. He donated fans during power outages. He drove people to hospital at midnight. He preached about family. "Love your wife," he would say loudly at men's fellowship. "Your home is your first ministry." People would nod. Women would smile at his wife, Esther. "Ah, you are lucky," they would tell her. "Such a God-fearing man." Esther would smile back. Her smile was soft. Careful. Measured. If you looked closely, you would notice she never laughed too loudly. But most people did not look closely. After service that day, people gathered around their car. "Sir, God will bless you. Sir, please pray for my business. Sir, we need men like you in this country." Samuel enjoyed it. You could see it in his shoulders. The way he stood taller. The way his voice grew deeper. On the drive home, he was silent. The car smelled like new leather and cologne. Daniel watched the side of his father's face. It was calm. Too calm. They reached home. The gate shut. The car engine went off. Samuel turned slowly. "Why were you looking dull in church?" Daniel blinked. "Sir." "Your face," he snapped. "You looked angry. As if I forced you to sit there." I wasn't angry, sir." His father stared at him. Then he stepped out of the car. Inside the house, Esther moved quickly to the kitchen to reheat the rice she had cooked before church. Samuel removed his watch and placed it carefully on the center table. He walked into the kitchen doorway. "Taste this," he said. Esther handed him a spoon. He tasted. He frowned. "Too much salt." "I am sorry. I will fix it." He threw the spoon into the sink. "Always sorry." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Peace was already in her room. She had learned to disappear early. Samuel stepped closer to Esther. "You embarrass me," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I did not mean." The slap came fast. Quick. Sharp. Daniel flinched in the sitting room. He did not move. He never moved. The rule in the house was clear. Stay out of it. Upstairs, later that night, Daniel heard his mother crying in the bathroom. The tap was running loudly. That was another rule. Turn on water when you cry, so the sound can drown you. Daniel lay on his bed staring at the ceiling fan. His hands were shaking. He remembered something he once heard in school. "Our parents are our heroes." He almost laughed. But he did not. He just stared at the spinning fan. And something inside him began to change. The next Sunday, Samuel preached during men's fellowship. He stood at the pulpit and said, "A man must control his home. If your wife disrespects you, correct her. The Bible says." The men nodded. Some even clapped. Esther sat at the back. Her left wrist was wrapped in a scarf. Daniel noticed. No one else did. After the meeting, one elderly woman touched Esther's shoulder. "You are glowing," she said warmly. Esther smiled. "Yes, Ma." That night, Samuel did not shout. He was in a good mood. Because 3 people had invited him to speak at their house fellowship. Because the pastor had called him pillar of the church. Because people admired him. Admiration fed him. Silence fed him too. And Daniel was learning. Learning that monsters do not always roar. Sometimes they preach. One evening, Esther's younger brother came to visit from Suralere. He brought bread and groundnut. He laughed loudly. Samuel did not laugh back. "How long are you staying?" Samuel asked. "Just a few days," the brother replied cheerfully. Samuel nodded slowly. On the 3rd day, he stood by the doorway with folded arms. "I think you should return home tomorrow," he said flatly. The brother hesitated. "So soon?" "Yes." No argument. He left the next morning. Daniel watched his mother's face as she waved goodbye. There was a small crack in her smile. Just a small one. But Daniel saw it. And he remembered. Weeks passed. The abuse grew quieter. But harder. Sometimes no hitting. Just words. You are useless. You are lucky I married you. Without me, who are you? Words can bruise. They do not show on skin. Daniel began staying out longer after school. He joined the football team. Not because he loved football, but because the field was louder than his house. One evening, he returned early. He heard shouting before he entered. His father's voice was sharp. His mother's voice was begging. Then, a crash. Daniel dropped his bag. He ran upstairs. His father had pushed Esther against the wall. Her head hit the frame. Blood trickled down her forehead. Something inside Daniel snapped. He stepped between them. His heart was pounding so loud he could barely hear himself speak. "Don't touch her again," he said. The room went still. Samuel looked at him slowly. "What did you say?" Daniel's hands were shaking. "If you touch her again," he said, louder now, "I will do something you will never forget." Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop. Samuel laughed. A low, dangerous laugh. "You? Do something?" Daniel did not move. They stared at each other. For the first time. Man to boy. Beast to witness. Samuel leaned close to his face. "Never threaten me in my house again." Daniel did not step back. And that was the moment everything truly began. Because monsters do not fear wives. But sometimes they fear sons. That night, Samuel did not sleep early. He walked around the house. Thinking. Planning. His pride was wounded. A child had spoken to him like that. A child. And pride. Pride is a dangerous thing. 3 months later. The stew burned. The shouting grew louder. The slap echoed. The push came faster than Daniel planned. The body fell. The stairs did not forgive. And now, the church bells were ringing again outside. Neighbors were knocking at the gate. Esther looked at Daniel one last time. "Remember," she whispered. Daddy fell. Daniel opened the door. And as he stepped outside to call for help, he knew something terrible. The fall was not the end. It was only the beginning. The ambulance siren came late. Too late. But loud enough to make the neighbors gather. Daniel stood by the gate of their house in Magodo Phase 2, holding it open while 2 men in navy uniforms carried his father's body on a stretcher. Someone had covered him with a white sheet. The sheet did not hide the blood completely. A small red line had already begun to spread through the fabric near his head. People gasped. "What happened?" "Jesus! Deacon Samuel?" Daniel heard the whispers like they were underwater. His mother stood behind him, one arm around Peace. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "He slipped on the stairs," she said. "It happened so fast." Her lip was swollen. She had wiped the blood from it. She had changed her wrapper. She had tied her scarf properly. She looked like a woman who had just lost her husband. Not like a woman who had just been beaten. The paramedic asked, "Was he conscious when you found him?" Esther paused for half a second. "No," she answered softly. "He fell. We rushed to him." Daniel's throat felt dry. He wanted to correct her. He wanted to say, "I pushed him." But the words would not come. Because when his mother looked at him earlier, it was not fear in her eyes. It was protection. And protection can feel heavier than guilt. Later that night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The living room still smelled like stew and dettle. Someone from church had cleaned the blood from the floor. They said it was not good for children to see such things. Daniel still saw it. Everywhere. He sat on the edge of his bed and stared at his hands. He replayed the moment again. His father's fingers digging into his mother's arm. His mother's head hitting the wall. The anger rising in him like hot water in a kettle. The push. He did not plan it. He did not think. He just moved. Peace knocked on his door gently. "Are you sleeping?" she whispered. "No." She entered slowly, holding her teddy bear. "Is Daddy in heaven?" she asked. Daniel swallowed. "I don't know." Peace climbed into his bed without asking. She pressed close to him. "He said heaven is only for good people," she said. Daniel stared at the wall. Outside, somewhere in the estate, a generator started humming. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since it happened, he felt afraid. Not of police. Not of prison. But of something else. What if he was like his father? By morning, the news had spread across Acadia. At Christ Vine Assembly, members cried openly. Such a humble man. Such a giver. This life is vanity. Pastor Akin stood at the pulpit with tears in his eyes. Deacon Samuel was a pillar, he said. A man of honor. A lover of God. The congregation murmured in agreement. In the front row, Esther sat dressed in black. Daniel and Peace sat beside her. Daniel could feel eyes on them. People came one by one to hug his mother. Be strong. He lived well. God needed him. Daniel wanted to shout. You don't know him. But he did not. Because they did not know. And maybe they never would. The first week felt strange. No shouting. No footsteps pacing at midnight. No door slamming. The house was quiet in a new way. Esther began sleeping without turning on the bathroom tap. Daniel noticed. He noticed that she did not flinch when a plate fell accidentally. He noticed she laughed once when Peace told a silly story. It was small. But it was real. Then the guilt would return. Like a shadow. Daniel started avoiding mirrors. Every time he looked at his reflection, he saw his father's eyes staring back. On the 5th day, 2 police officers came. They wore simple clothes, not uniforms. One was tall with a soft voice. "Madam," he said, sitting on the sofa, "we just need to confirm a few things." Daniel's heart began to race. Esther nodded calmly. "Yes, officer." The tall officer looked around. "Was there any argument before the fall?" Esther shook her head. "No. We had just returned from church." Daniel's hands began sweating. The officer turned to him. "Son, where were you when your father fell?" Daniel froze. His mother's eyes flickered toward him for only a second. "I was upstairs," Daniel said slowly. "I heard the noise." The officer studied his face. For a long time. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Then the officer nodded. "Accidents happen." He stood. "We are sorry for your loss." When they left, Daniel felt weak. He walked to the kitchen sink and held onto it. His mother came beside him. "You did well," she said softly. He looked at her. "Mummy. I didn't mean." She touched his shoulder gently. "I know." There was something new in her voice. Not fear. Not sadness. Relief. And that scared him more than anything. The funeral was large. Bigger than Daniel expected. People came from Suralire, Yaba, even Lekki. They printed banners with his father's face. "A general has fallen." Daniel stared at the banner. He almost laughed again. Inside the church hall, the choir sang loudly. People wept openly. One man stood to give a testimony. "Deacon Samuel once paid my rent when I had nothing," he said through tears. "He saved my family." Clapping filled the hall. Daniel's chest felt tight. Because that part was true. His father did help people. He was not evil everywhere. That was the confusing part. He could be generous outside. And cruel inside. How can someone be both? Daniel looked at his mother. She sat still. Very still. Like someone holding in years of storms. Then it was her turn to speak. She walked slowly to the microphone. The hall became quiet. "My husband," she began softly, "was a strong man." Daniel felt his stomach drop. He loved this church. He loved his children. Daniel's jaw tightened. Silence hung for a second. Then she added something unexpected. "And he fought many battles we could not see." The hall nodded in sympathy. But Daniel looked at her sharply. Because that sentence meant two things. The church heard one meaning. Daniel heard another. She stepped down. And for a second. Their eyes met. It felt like a secret handshake. A truth hidden in plain sight. 2 days after the funeral, Daniel overheard something. His mother was in the bedroom speaking quietly on the phone. "Yes," she said. "I will bring the hospital file tomorrow." Daniel froze. "Hospital file?" He stepped closer to the door. She lowered her voice. "There were previous injuries, yes, but I never reported." Daniel's heart pounded. Previous injuries. Documented. His father's violence was not invisible after all. It was written somewhere. On paper. With dates. With doctor signatures. He stepped back quietly before she saw him. For the first time. He realized something. If anyone ever connects those records to the night of the fall, the story might change. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He went downstairs for water. As he passed his parents' old bedroom, he noticed the door slightly open. Inside, his mother was sitting on the floor. Not crying. Just staring at something in her lap. Daniel stepped closer. It was a folder. Brown. Thick. Full of medical reports. Photographs. Dates. Bruises. Cuts. Stitches. Proof. Esther looked up slowly. She did not hide the folder. She did not smile. She did not speak. She just said one sentence. "If the truth comes out, everything will change." Daniel felt cold. Because he did not know which truth she meant. The abuse? Or the push? And outside, in the dark street of Magodo, a police car drove past slowly. Without sirens. Without lights. Just watching. The police car did not stop that night. It only slowed down. Then it kept moving. But Daniel did not sleep after that. He lay on his back staring at the ceiling, counting the slow turns of the fan. Every small sound felt louder than normal. The fridge humming. A dog barking far away. The gate creaking when the night guard in the estate walked past. He kept seeing the brown folder in his mother's hands. Proof. Bruises do not lie. But people do. And sometimes they lie to survive. The next morning felt almost peaceful. No shouting. No heavy footsteps. No tension in the air like invisible smoke. Esther made tea. She hummed softly while spreading butter on bread. Daniel paused in the kitchen doorway. He had not heard her hum in years. It sounded strange. Like a bird testing its wings. Peace sat at the table swinging her legs. "Mummy, can we paint my room pink now?" she asked. Esther blinked. Pink? Yes. Daddy said pink is foolish. Silence fell for a moment. Esther placed the knife down slowly. We can paint it, she said. Peace smiled so wide her dimples showed. Daniel felt something twist inside him. This house was changing. At school, Daniel could not focus. His friend Toby slapped his shoulder. Guy, sorry about your dad. Daniel nodded. He was a good man, Toby added. My mum cried when she heard. Daniel forced a small smile. If only Toby knew. But telling would break everything. And Daniel was not sure he wanted the world to see the broken parts. Because if they saw the broken parts, they might see him too. The memory returned again that afternoon. The night he stood between his father and his mother. His father's breath smelled like malt and pepper soup. His fingers were tight around Esther's arm. Move, his father had growled. No, Daniel had said. His voice had surprised even him. Small. But steady. Samuel's eyes had changed then. Not anger. Not exactly. Threat. The kind that says, I will remember this. And he did. After that night, the abuse changed shape. It became quieter. More careful. No marks on visible places. No shouting when neighbors were home. But it did not stop. It just learned how to hide better. That evening, Pastor Akin came to visit. He arrived in his silver Toyota Camry, Bible under his arm. He sat on the sofa where Samuel used to sit. He cleared his throat. Esther, he said gently, the church wants to start a foundation in Samuel's name. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. A foundation. In his father's name. For widows and children, the pastor continued. It will honor his legacy. Daniel almost laughed again. The word felt sharp in his mouth. Esther folded her hands on her lap. That is kind, she said. The pastor looked around the house. Samuel was a strong man. Discipline was important to him. Daniel stiffened. Discipline. That word again. It was always discipline. Never violence. Never cruelty. Just discipline. The pastor turned to Daniel. You must carry your father's name well. Daniel met his eyes. I will, he said. But in his mind, the words were different. I will not become him. That night, Esther called Daniel into her room. The brown folder lay on the bed between them. She opened it slowly. Inside were hospital receipts from Ikeja General Hospital. Dates from years ago. Fractured wrist. Soft tissue injury. Concussion. Daniel stared. I told them I fell, she said quietly. Her voice did not shake. I told them I slipped in the bathroom. She turned another page. A photograph. Her face swollen. Her eye purple. Daniel's stomach turned. Why didn't you leave? He whispered. Esther closed her eyes briefly. Where would I go? She asked softly. With 3 children? No job? And everyone thinking I was lucky? Daniel had no answer. Because in church, she was lucky. At least that was what they said. She looked at him carefully. You did not kill your father, she said slowly. Daniel's breath caught. You pushed him because you were protecting me. That does not make it simple, she added. And that was the truth. It was not simple. Nothing about that night was simple. 2 days later, a neighbor came by. Mrs. Adekunle from next door. She sat down and sighed. I keep thinking about that night, she said. I heard shouting before the fall. Daniel froze. Esther's face remained calm. Shouting? She asked lightly. Yes. I thought maybe children were playing. Daniel's pulse quickened. Mrs. Addiconnell shook her head. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe. Or maybe not. Daniel felt the room tilt slightly. Accidents are neat. Truth is messy. And messy things leave traces. That night, Daniel lost his temper for the first time. Peace spilled juice on the table. He snapped. Can't you be careful? Peace's eyes filled with tears instantly. Daniel saw it. Saw fear. The same fear he used to feel. He stepped back. What had he just done? He was loud. Too loud. His heart pounded. He walked to the bathroom and locked the door. He looked at himself in the mirror. The same eyebrows as his father. The same jawline. He hit the sink lightly with his fist. No, he whispered. Trauma moves like inheritance. It tries to pass from father to son. And Daniel felt it trying. On Friday afternoon, the same tall officer returned. This time alone. I need to ask a few more questions, he said calmly. Daniel's chest tightened. They sat at the dining table. The officer looked at Esther. Madam, a neighbor mentioned hearing shouting. Silence filled the room. Daniel could hear the clock ticking. Esther folded her hands. My husband and I disagreed sometimes, she said. Like any couple. The officer nodded slowly. Was he violent? The word hung heavy. Violent. Not discipline. Not strong. Violent. Esther's eyes flickered. Daniel held his breath. She could tell the truth now. She could open the folder. She could show the photographs. She could say everything. Instead, she said quietly. No. Daniel's heart dropped. The officer studied her face. Then he turned to Daniel. And you, son? Daniel swallowed. His mind raced. If he tells the truth, his father's name will fall. The church will turn. The foundation will disappear. His mother will be questioned. He may go to juvenile detention. If he lies, the secret remains. But secrets rot. Daniel looked at his mother. She did not move. He looked back at the officer. No, he said. The lie felt heavy. But it came out smooth. The officer leaned back. All right, he said finally. We will close the case. The word echoed. Closed cases still have shadows. He stood up. At the door, he paused. Sometimes, he said quietly, people are not who we think they are. Then he left. Daniel felt his legs weaken. Did the officer know? Or was it just a warning? That night, Daniel walked past his father's old study. The door was open. Inside, the desk drawer was slightly pulled out. Daniel stepped closer. Inside the drawer was a small black notebook. He picked it up. Opened it. And what he saw made his blood run cold. Dates. Records. Notes. Written in his father's handwriting. About discipline. About control. About keeping his family in line. And on the last page, a sentence underlined twice. If they ever rise against you, break them early. Daniel's hands began to shake. Because suddenly, the fall on the stairs did not feel like the only thing that had ended. It felt like something had been passed down. And he did not know if he had truly stopped it. Or started something worse. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat on the floor of his father's old study with the small black notebook in his hands. The room still smelled like his father's cologne. Strong. Sharp. Like something trying to prove it was important. The desk was neat. Too neat. His father liked neat things. Neat shoes. Neat sermons. Neat lies. Daniel flipped through the notebook again. Every page had dates. Corrected Esther. Disrespectful tone. Removed phone access, too many outside influences. Spoke firmly to Daniel, signs of rebellion. Spoke firmly. Daniel's jaw tightened. He remembered that firm talk. It had ended with his ear ringing for hours. Another page. A man who loses control of his home loses control of his name. Daniel's hands trembled. His father had not thought he was hurting them. He thought he was protecting something. His image. His pride. His name. Daniel closed the notebook slowly. And then he saw something else. A folded paper tucked inside the back cover. He pulled it out. It was a draft of a sermon. Title, The Order of the Godly Home. Under it, his father had written. Fear is necessary. Love alone does not sustain authority. Daniel felt cold. Fear. That was the word. Not discipline. Not correction. Fear. The next morning, Daniel carried the notebook to his mother. She was washing plates. The water ran slowly over her fingers. He placed the notebook on the table. She froze. She did not touch it. I found it, Daniel said. Esther dried her hands carefully before opening it. As she read, her face did not change much. But her shoulders dropped slightly. Like someone who had finally found proof that they were not crazy. He believed this, Daniel whispered. Yes, she said. Why didn't you fight back? Esther looked at him. I did, she answered quietly. In ways you could not see. Daniel did not understand. She continued. I protected you. I protected peace. I stayed so you could finish school in one place. I stayed so people would not call you children of a broken home. Daniel felt anger rise again. At what cost? He asked. Esther's eyes filled slowly. At the cost of myself, she said. Silence filled the kitchen. Not heavy. Just honest. 2 weeks later, the church held a small ceremony. A banner hung at the entrance of Christ Vine Assembly in Ikeja. The Samuel Adeyemi Family Support Foundation. Daniel stared at it. His father's smiling face printed large. The same smile that used to greet the congregation. The same smile that would disappear the moment the gate shut at home. Pastor Akin stood at the microphone. Even in death, he said, our brother continues to bless lives. Clapping filled the hall. Daniel felt something snap inside his chest. He looked around. People were crying. Smiling. Praising. No one knew. Or maybe. No one wanted to know. He stood up suddenly. Peace grabbed his hand. Where are you going? She whispered. Daniel did not answer. He walked toward the front of the church. Pastor Akin paused when he saw him. Yes, Daniel? The microphone was close. Too close. Daniel could hear his own breathing through the speakers. He looked at his mother. She shook her head slightly. Just a small movement. Daniel swallowed. He thought about the notebook. The hospital records. The fear. The blood on the stairs. His hands were shaking. He began. The whole church waited. I just want to thank everyone for coming, he finished. The room relaxed. Applause followed. Daniel stepped back slowly. His heart was pounding. He almost told them. But almost does not change history. That night, Peace knocked on his door again. "Daniel," she said softly, "can I ask something?" He nodded. "Was Daddy always angry?" Daniel hesitated. "Yes," he said carefully. Peace hugged her teddy bear tighter. "Then why did people say he was good?" Daniel opened his mouth. "How do you explain that to an 8-year-old?" "Sometimes," he said slowly, "people show different faces in different places." Peace frowned. "That is confusing." "Yes," Daniel whispered. "It is." She looked down. "I don't miss him," she said quietly. The honesty in her voice made Daniel's chest ache. "I feel bad that I don't miss him." Daniel pulled her into a hug. "You are allowed to feel what you feel," he said. He was not sure if he believed it. But he said it anyway. Days passed. The house felt lighter. But Daniel felt heavier. He began having dreams. In the dreams, he was the one standing at the top of the stairs. But instead of pushing his father, he was pushing Peace. Or his mother. Or someone else. He would wake up sweating. Breathing fast. One afternoon, a boy at school bumped into him accidentally. "Watch it," the boy said. Daniel shoved him back. The boy fell. The classroom went silent. Daniel's hands were clenched before he even realized it. The teacher rushed in. "What is going on?" Daniel stared at his fists. He had not even thought. He just reacted. Just like. "No." He stepped back. "I'm sorry," he muttered. The teacher looked at him closely. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Daniel nodded. But he was not sure. Because anger was still inside him. It did not leave with his father's fall. It stayed. Like an echo. One evening, Mrs. Adekunle came again. This time, her face was serious. "I need to say something," she told Esther. They sat in the living room. Daniel listened from the hallway. "I heard more than shouting that night," Mrs. Adekunle said slowly. "I heard something fall before the big crash." Esther's fingers tightened slightly on her wrapper. Mrs. Adekunle continued. "I did not want to say anything before. But if there was trouble." Her eyes moved toward Daniel briefly. Esther stood up calmly. "There was no trouble," she said. Her voice was steady. Mrs. Adekunle studied her face. Then she nodded slowly. "All right." But doubt lingered in her eyes. After she left, Daniel stepped into the living room. "She suspects," he said. "Yes," Esther replied. "Should we tell someone?" Daniel asked. Esther looked at him carefully. "And say what?" she asked. "That you pushed him while he was beating me," she added quietly. The words hung in the air. Daniel felt tears burn behind his eyes. He had never heard her say it that directly. "Beating me. Not discipline. Not argument. Beating." She stepped closer to him. "You are my son," she said. "I will not let them take you." Daniel's voice shook. "But what if I am becoming him?" Esther's eyes softened. "You stopped him," she said firmly. "That is the difference." That night, Daniel went back to the study. He opened the notebook again. He stared at the last sentence. "If they ever rise against you, break them early." Daniel tore the page out slowly. He folded it. Then he walked to the kitchen. He lit a match. And he watched the paper burn in the sink. The flames curled the edges. Turned the words black. Turned them into ash. He felt a strange relief. Until he heard a voice behind him. You think burning it changes anything? Daniel turned sharply. Peace was standing in the doorway, watching him. And in her small hands, she was holding another page from the notebook. One he had not seen before. Daniel's heart stopped. Because children notice things adults miss. And whatever was on that page, it had made her face look afraid. Daniel stared at Peace. The kitchen light flickered once. In her small hands, the torn page trembled slightly. "What is that?" he asked. Peace walked toward him slowly. "I found it in Daddy's Bible," she said. Daniel's stomach dropped. His father's Bible. The one he carried every Sunday. The one filled with highlighted verses. The one people admired. Peace handed the paper to him. Daniel unfolded it. It was not like the other notes. This one was not about discipline. It was about image. Written in his father's neat handwriting. Never let outsiders see weakness. If Esther ever speaks against you publicly, remind her what she will lose. Children must fear consequences. Reputation first. Always. Daniel's hands began to shake. Reputation first. Always. Peace's voice was small. Was Daddy afraid? Daniel looked at her. Afraid? He had never thought of that. He always thought of his father as strong. Loud. Unbreakable. But this sounded like fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing respect. Fear of being exposed. Daniel swallowed. "Yes," he said softly. "I think he was." Peace frowned. Then why didn't he just stop being mean? Daniel almost smiled sadly. Because sometimes people don't know how to be anything else. They sat at the kitchen table. The burnt paper from earlier was now gray dust in the sink. Peace rested her chin on her hands. "Did you push him?" she asked quietly. The question landed heavy. Daniel looked at her. Her eyes were not accusing. Just searching. He nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to make him die," he whispered. Peace blinked. "I know," she said. "That's simple. No judgment. No drama. Just a child who had seen too much." "He was hurting Mummy," she added. Daniel nodded. Silence settled between them. Not scary. Just real. Peace reached across the table and held his hand. "You're not like him," she said. Daniel wanted to believe that. He really did. On Sunday, the foundation officially began its work. A widow stood in front of the church holding a food package labeled, "In loving memory of Deacon Samuel Adeyemi." Cameras flashed. People clapped. Pastor Akin called Daniel to stand beside him. "This young man," the pastor said proudly, "is his father's legacy." Daniel felt the words hit him like a stone. Legacy. The crowd smiled at him. He forced a polite nod. Inside, something twisted. Because what if legacy was not only money and food packages? What if legacy was also anger? Fear? Silence? The pastor handed Daniel the microphone. "Say something," he encouraged. Daniel's palms were sweaty. He looked at the crowd. At the banner with his father's face. At the smiling people who never heard the shouting through the walls. He took a deep breath. "My father," he began slowly, "helped many people. He taught me that what we do at home matters." A few people nodded. Daniel's heart pounded. "At home," he continued carefully, "we should be kind." The word felt heavy. Kindness should not only be for outside. The room grew quieter. Pastor Akin shifted slightly. Daniel felt his courage rising. Just a little. Sometimes, he added, people are hurting in ways we don't see. Daniel stepped back from the microphone. He had not told everything. But he had not lied either. And for the first time, he felt like he had told a small piece of truth. That evening, there was a knock at the gate. Daniel's heart jumped. The tall police officer stood outside again. This time, his expression was serious. "Good evening," he said calmly. Esther invited him in. He sat down slowly. "I need to ask something important," he said. Daniel's chest tightened. The officer placed a small object on the table. It was Samuel's glasses. One of the paramedics mentioned something, he continued. He said the position of the body did not fully match a simple slip. Silence filled the room. Daniel felt his pulse in his ears. Esther's face remained composed. "What are you suggesting?" she asked gently. The officer looked at Daniel. "Did you try to stop something?" he asked quietly. Not accusing. Just asking. Daniel's throat felt dry. He thought about peace. About the notebook. About the hospital files. About the burned page. He looked at his mother. Her eyes were steady. But behind them, there was fear. Not for herself. For him. The officer waited. Daniel opened his mouth. Then said softly, "I tried to help." The officer did not interrupt. "My dad was angry," Daniel continued carefully. "I stepped in." He lost his balance. The room felt smaller. The officer studied his face. Then he leaned back. "That is different from murder," he said quietly. Daniel blinked. The word murder felt sharp. The officer continued. "But it is still the truth." Esther's fingers tightened on her lap. The officer sighed. "I have seen homes like this before," he said softly. "People protect reputations. They hide pain." He looked at Daniel. "You are not the first son to stand in front of a father. So what happens now?" Esther asked. The officer picked up the glasses. "I can close this," he said slowly. "Officially, it remains an accident. But understand something." He looked at Daniel again. "Violence does not end with one fall. It continues if you don't face it." Then he stood. At the door, he paused. "Make sure this house changes," he said. And he left. Daniel sat down slowly. His legs felt weak. He had not fully confessed. But he had not fully hidden either. He had said enough. The truth was now shared between three people. His mother. Himself. And the officer. Esther walked to him and touched his cheek. "You were brave," she said. Daniel shook his head. "I was angry," he replied. "Yes," she said gently. "But you used it to protect." Daniel looked down at his hands. "I don't want to carry his anger," he whispered. Esther nodded slowly. "Then we learned something new," she said. That night, Daniel sat alone in the living room. The banner from the foundation event leaned against the wall, waiting to be stored away. His father's smiling face stared back at him. Daniel walked toward it slowly. He looked into the printed eyes. And for a moment, he did not see a monster. He saw a scared man. A man who believed fear was strength. A man who never learned another way. Daniel picked up the banner. He hesitated. Then he folded it in half. Right across the smiling face. And as he did, he made a quiet promise. Not just to protect his mother. Not just to protect peace. But to break something bigger. The pattern. The silence. The legacy of fear. But breaking patterns is not easy. And the real test had not come yet. The banner stayed folded in the corner of the living room. No one moved it. It leaned against the wall like a quiet witness. Daniel walked past it every day. Every time, he felt the same question in his chest. What do I carry from him? His father's name? Or his father's anger? The dreams came back. In this one, Daniel stood at the top of the stairs again. But this time, it was Peace standing below. She looked up at him. Not scared. Just waiting. And Daniel felt his hands pushing. He woke up with a sharp breath. Sweat on his forehead. The room was dark. He sat up slowly. His heart was racing. He walked quietly to Peace's room. She was asleep. Her teddy bear under her chin. Breathing softly. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. I won't, he whispered to himself. I won't become him. But saying it and becoming it are two different things. 3 days later, Esther did something no one expected. She told them they were going to see someone. A counselor, she said gently. Peace wrinkled her nose. Are we in trouble? No, Esther replied. We are healing. Daniel felt nervous. In their community, people did not talk about things like this. They prayed. They fasted. They endured. They did not sit in rooms and talk about pain. But Esther had changed. She had stopped protecting reputation. She had started protecting peace. They went to a small counseling center near Allen Avenue in Ikeja. The office smelled like lavender. The counselor was a calm woman with kind eyes. She did not rush them. She did not judge. She just asked simple questions. How did it feel in your house before? Peace spoke first. Like walking on glass, she said softly. Daniel swallowed. That was exactly it. The counselor nodded. And now? Peace thought for a moment. Quieter, she said. But scary quiet. Daniel understood that too. Silence can be peaceful. Or it can be waiting. The counselor turned to Daniel. What do you feel when you think about your father? Daniel hesitated. Angry, he said. Then added quietly, and guilty. The counselor leaned forward slightly. Guilt means you care, she said. But anger means something was wrong. Daniel looked at the floor. Something was wrong. For years. And no one said it out loud. The following Sunday, something unexpected happened. During testimony time, a woman stood up. She was new to the church. Her voice shook slightly. I want to say something, she began. The church grew quiet. She took a deep breath. I used to attend another church. My husband was respected there. Very respected. Daniel's chest tightened. She continued. But at home, he was different. Murmurs moved through the hall. She did not stop. I kept quiet for years because I did not want to disgrace him. Her voice cracked. But silence nearly destroyed me. The room felt heavy. Pastor Akin shifted uncomfortably. The woman wiped her eyes. If you are hurting at home, she said, please speak. Daniel's heart pounded. The words felt like they were aimed straight at him. At his mother. At their house. He looked at Esther. Her hands were clasped tightly together. Her face was calm. But her eyes were wet. For the first time, the church was not only praising strength. It was listening to pain. And that changed something in the air. After service, Esther walked slowly toward Pastor Akin. Daniel followed, unsure. Mama Esther, the pastor greeted warmly. She took a breath. Pastor, she said gently, I need to tell you something. Daniel's pulse quickened. The pastor smiled politely. Yes? Esther's voice did not shake. My husband was not always what people thought. Silence. The pastor blinked. I don't understand. Esther met his eyes. He struggled with anger, she said. And control. The pastor's smile faded. Are you saying? I am saying, Esther interrupted softly, that we should be careful how we honor people without knowing their homes. The words were not loud. But they were clear. Daniel felt something shift inside him. This was not a full confession. But it was not silence either. The pastor looked stunned. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Why tell me this now? He asked quietly. Esther inhaled slowly. Because I do not want my son to think fear is faith. The sentence hung in the air. The pastor had no immediate answer. That evening, Daniel sat alone on the stairs. The same stairs. He ran his fingers along the railing. He remembered the fall. The sound. The silence. He closed his eyes. I forgive you, he whispered into the empty house. He did not know if he meant it. But he wanted to. Not because his father deserved it. But because Daniel deserved freedom from the weight. Anger ties you to the person who hurt you. Forgiveness unties the knot. It does not erase what happened. But it stops it from owning you. Daniel stood up slowly. He walked to the corner where the folded banner rested. He picked it up. He unfolded it gently. His father's smiling face appeared again. Daniel looked at it carefully. You were wrong, he said softly. But I will not be. He did not tear the banner. He did not burn it. He rolled it up. Carefully. And placed it inside the storage room. Not displayed. Not destroyed. Just, stored. Because the past cannot be erased. But it does not have to be worshipped. Later that night, Daniel heard something unusual. Laughter. Real laughter. From his mother's room. He walked closer quietly. The door was open slightly. Inside, Esther was on the phone. Smiling. Her voice was light. Daniel had not heard that sound in years. It felt new. Hopeful. Alive. But as he turned to walk back to his room, he saw something on the hallway table. The brown hospital folder. Open. And on top of it, a pen. And a blank sheet of paper. Daniel froze. Because sometimes healing means silence. And sometimes healing means speaking fully. And he did not know which one his mother was choosing. If she writes that letter. If she tells everything. The church will shake. The foundation may fall. His father's image will break. But maybe. That is the final thing that needs to fall. Daniel stared at the blank paper. Daniel stood in the hallway staring at the blank paper. The brown hospital folder was open. Photographs. Reports. Dates. Years of silence resting in one place. From inside the bedroom, his mother's laughter faded. The phone call ended. The room went quiet. Footsteps. Esther stepped into the hallway and saw him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she looked down at the paper. You're wondering if I will write it, she said gently. Daniel nodded. Are you? She walked to the table slowly and picked up the pen. Her hand hovered above the page. I don't know, she said honestly. And that honesty felt bigger than any speech. They sat at the dining table together. The house was still. Peace was asleep. Daniel stared at the folder again. If you tell them, he said quietly, they might hate him. Esther looked at him. They already love a version of him that was not real. Daniel swallowed. If you tell them, they might ask questions about the night. There it was. The real fear. Not reputation. Consequences. Esther reached across the table and took his hand. I will not let you carry this alone, she said. Daniel's voice was small. What if they say I killed him? Esther's eyes did not move from his face. You stopped violence, she said. You did not plan death. Silence filled the room. It was not a comfortable silence. But it was honest. And honest silences are better than fake peace. Esther picked up the pen. She began to write slowly. Not a dramatic letter. Not angry. Just simple. I am writing to share something important about my late husband. Daniel watched her hand move across the page. She did not describe every slap. She did not list every insult. She did not speak with revenge. She wrote about anger. About fear. About hiding pain to protect reputation. About how churches must look inside homes, not only at pulpits. When she finished, she placed the pen down. Her hand trembled slightly. I am tired of protecting an image, she said softly. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. The final fall was not the body on the stairs. It was the lie. The following Sunday felt different before it even began. Daniel could sense it. The air inside Christ Vine Assembly felt tight. Whispers moved across the chairs. Pastor Akin stood at the front with a folded paper in his hand. Esther sat calmly in the third row this time. Not the front. Daniel sat beside her. Peace held his hand. The pastor cleared his throat. There is something we need to address, he said. The hall grew quiet. Daniel felt his heartbeat in his ears. Pastor Akin unfolded the paper. He read. Not every detail. But enough. He spoke about hidden pain. About anger behind closed doors. About how respect in public does not excuse harm in private. Gasps moved through the room. Some people looked confused. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked ashamed. Daniel scanned the crowd. He saw something he had never seen before. Not admiration. Reflection. The pastor finished reading. He paused. Then he said something that surprised everyone. If you are hurting at home, he said, voice softer now, please come and speak. We will not choose image over truth again. Silence. Heavy. Real. Then. The same woman who had testified the week before stood up. She walked forward. And this time. She was not alone. Another woman followed her. Then another. The church was shifting. Slowly. Painfully. But shifting. Daniel felt tears in his eyes. Not because everything was fixed. But because something honest had started. Outside the church building, people avoided Esther at first. Some did not know what to say. Some whispered. But one older woman stepped forward. She held Esther's hands tightly. Slowly. Painfully. But shifting. Daniel felt tears in his eyes. Not because everything was fixed. But because something honest had started. Outside the church building, people avoided Esther at first. Some did not know what to say. Some whispered. But one older woman stepped forward. She held Esther's hands tightly. Thank you. She said. Her eyes were red. I thought I was alone. Esther squeezed her hands back. You are not, she replied. Daniel watched his mother. She looked taller somehow. Not because she was louder. but because she was no longer bending under silence. That evening, Daniel sat alone on the staircase one last time. He closed his eyes and thought about his father. Not the monster. Not the saint. The man. A boy who probably grew up being told that fear equals respect. A young man who believed control meant strength. A husband who did not know how to handle shame or insecurity. A father who confused obedience with love. Daniel exhaled slowly. Understanding someone does not excuse them. But it helps you choose differently. His father was not born cruel. He became it. And Daniel realized something important. Becoming is a choice. Just like breaking the pattern is a choice. Weeks passed. The foundation did not disappear. It changed. Its new name was simple. Safe Homes Initiative. It focused on helping families speak honestly. Helping couples seek counseling. Helping children feel safe. Daniel stood outside the church building one afternoon watching volunteers carry chairs. Peace ran past him laughing. Real laughter. Not careful laughter. Daniel smiled. The sun was bright over Ikeja. Life was not perfect. There were still whispers. Still questions. Still nights when guilt tried to creep back in. But something had shifted. Daniel no longer felt like he was standing at the top of the stairs waiting for disaster. He felt like he was walking forward. And as he looked up at the church sign, he understood the final truth. His father's fall was loud. But the real fall was the fall of fear. And that one needed to happen. If you love this story or stories like this, please subscribe, comment and share.